as we showed with in the previous lectures, our civilization starts with an epic poetry, Homer. And indeed, this genre, this form developed and produced many results through history. We'll see some. But very soon, Greeks developed another form, another civilizational art form, which served them very well and served our civilization again for many thousands of years. This is theater. Greeks invented theater. In the very last decades of the 6th century, say, this is approximate, year 525 BC, they started regular during this festival of Dionysia, when they were doing recitation of Homer. They started also choral performances, when choral performance would usually discuss, elaborate some of the themes from Homer. They would have competitions. Greeks were competitive. And the team which won would get a goat, a billy goat, he-goat. This is why we have the word tragedy. It comes from a Greek word, tragos, billy goat. So we think it's just some very sad, tragic thing. Well, no, it's actually about goats. So originally it was a group of people, maybe 10, maybe 12. We know eventually it becomes 12. And then by the middle of next century, it even reaches 14. This chorus, the group of singing and dancing people, were creating something which would be a combination of both opera and ballet today. They would sing and dance. Then there was a fellow, we know next to nothing about him except his name. Somewhere around 520 BC, he introduced a novelty. He said, why don't we have a dialogue? He said, we are going to have a chorus, but then we're going to have an actor who is going to talk to the chorus. His name was Festus. Some of you might know that theatrical things are called thespian things. That's in his honor, Festus. Nothing is left from this original thespian theater. What we do know that somewhere in the beginning of the next century, maybe around the year 495, somebody of whom we know quite a bit, namely a person called Aeschylus, expands the form. He says, I could do much more if I had 2 actors. And you say, well, it's only 2 actors. But you see what he realized, that with 2 actors, he could have very many people involved. Only 2 of them will talk at a time, plus the chorus. They would use different masks. So if I am Agamemnon, say, I wear a mask of Agamemnon. But in the next scene, I need to play Superman. So they didn't have Superman. So Achilles, I'm going to put a mask of Achilles. So having 2 actors allowed them to have a very complicated settings. Eventually, by the middle of the next century, Sophocles introduces 3. They never effectively go beyond 3. With 3, you could do just pretty much anything. Aeschylus. Aeschylus is one of the 3 great Greek tragedians. He was the first of whom we know, and in many respects, greatest. We'll talk about it. Then the second one is Sophocles. And the third one is Euripides. They come in the following sequence. Aeschylus, in the year 480, at the time of great battle of Salamis, is fighting in the battle. So he's probably 35, 40 years old, yes? We know that exactly at that time, Sophocles is singing in a chorus of boys celebrating the victory. So he's probably 15, 12. His voice didn't break yet. And we know, it just so happens, that Euripides is born on the day of the battle. So that sort of puts them all together. Of course, Sophocles manages to outlive Euripides. That is no here, no there. So Aeschylus was a great soldier. He first established himself as a great soldier at Marathon. We'll be talking more about Marathon, but I expect that most of you heard of the battle. So, you know, in the Battle of Marathon, he fights very bravely, and his brother becomes the hero, the guy who is recognized as the most heroic Greek soldier. He dies in the battle. I know how, but it's too bloody for you to know. Look it up. Then he, while writing plays, he also fights again 10 years after. So Marathon is 490, 480 Salamis, and then he fights at Plataea, the final great battle when Persians are defeated. When he dies, he leaves an inscription to be put on his tombstone. In it, he talks only about one thing, about his participation at Marathon. That's what he's proud. Right? Inventing tragedy, anybody could do that. So we know enough about Aeschylus. There are more, but so let us look at one of his dramas. Again, only 7 tragedies are left. He probably wrote close to 100, at least 70 we know names. From Sophocles, we know wrote about probably over 100. Only 7 remains, the same number. Euripides is luckier. 19 remain from about 100. They're just luck. The number of manuscripts is very small for all of them. For Aeschylus, his text is quite corrupt because the manuscripts which are left are not in good shape. So, but we're lucky to have what we have. So let us look at one of his trilogies. Today we will look at Aristeia. This is a sequence of 3 plays. Usually, during these performances at Dionysia, every author will present a trilogy followed by another satiric play for things. And then they will get the first prize, the one which wins. He got many first prizes. He was defeated at least once by Sophocles. But Aristeia did win the first prize. And in many respects, many authorities claim it is the greatest Greek drama which is left. And it also raises some issues of fundamental importance, as we shall see. So, 3 parts, first called Agamemnon. Remember Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, who is coming back now after winning the war at Troy, coming back to his capital. Well, by the way, Aeschylus, for political reason, moves the capital from Mycenae to Argos. Because you see, right at that time, Athenians negotiate a major military agreement with Argos. So, they take a very liberal attitude to facts. So now Agamemnon is going back to Argos. So you see the scene. Again, the Greek theater is this amphitheater with a scene, and there is a roof. And Aeschylus starts with using the roof, maybe for the first time. What we see when we enter, we see somebody on the roof, squatting there like that. He is a guardian. And he says, I'm here. I'm here day and night. I'm wet and I am uncomfortable. I have to watch for the beacon. We're waiting for the beacon to proclaim the victory in Troy. And I sit here as a dog. There is this wonderful image of this guy sitting as a dog. He gives a speech. I have to abbreviate. And then suddenly he says, look, what is there? And as I imagine, some special effect is over there showing the beacon. The lights are on. The Troy has been taken. So he says, I have to let the queen, Clytemnestra, know. And then he makes this very cryptic remark. There are dark things there. He's pointing to the palace. That's the roof of the palace. Who knows, knows. Who doesn't know, doesn't need to know. And of course, the audience knows the story. So they know there's something pretty bad going on down there. But who doesn't know, we will find out. The chorus comes. There is a long part of the play where only chorus talks. Chorus talks about different things, about general philosophical points, how bad it is to be rich. Very typical idea for Greeks, that riches will take you down, that it's better to be in the middle. That's a common thing. But then the chorus discloses something we do not know, because Homer didn't tell us about that. It tells us some terrible thing which happened on the way to Troy. That was 10 years ago. Apparently, Greeks couldn't start. The ships wouldn't move because the wind was not there. It was prevented by Artemis, a great goddess. She was upset about so many children who would die at Troy. So she demanded a sacrifice from the Greeks. She demanded, and that is very highly unusual for Greeks, it's a terrible thing, she demanded a human sacrifice. And the sacrifice was not just anyone. The sacrifice she demanded was that Agamemnon, the head of the expedition, the general, would sacrifice his oldest daughter, Iphigenia. And they describe this terrible sort of dialogue. This is all sung and danced by the chorus. This dialogue when sort of Agamemnon hesitates, but he says, I cannot betray my army. Here are 1,000 ships ready to go. And sacrifice is asked of me, I have to offer it. And he tricks his daughter to come. She's apparently, it's not an Aeschylus, but apparently she's offered marriage with Achilles. Not a bad thing. But it's not marriage with Achilles which is waiting. They grab her, they put her on the altar while she's screaming, they shut her mouth. It's a terrible scene, and they kill her. Of course, in some later traditions, we'll find out that no, it was not she who was killed. Artemis replaced her. Sacrifice of Abraham sort of appears among the Greeks. Sort of, you could replace a child with a sacrificial animal. But in Aeschylus, she dies. Okay? There is a terrible blood guilt on him. And here I have to tell you a little bit about Greek notion of blood guilt. They had a very simple notion that if you commit such a terrible thing as murder, you're covered with miasma, this guilt, which does not go away. And everybody around it is going to be affected. Some of you who might remember Oedipus Rex might remember that Thebes discovered that they have miasma covering the entire city. They're all dying because of some murder which was not atoned by the murder committed by Oedipus. They do not know, he does not know, but one person. So miasma is this terrible thing. So Greeks and Argos, the city of Agamemnon, inherit this curse. So what comes next? What comes next is Agamemnon arrives. I'm skipping lots. So Agamemnon arrives. I mean, music, glory. Out comes Clytemnestra, and she makes a strange statement. She says, let us put the most precious draperies, or it's not quite clear what it is, but some unbelievably precious silk on the floor, so Agamemnon will walk to his palace like a god. Of course, even Agamemnon knows that imitating gods is not a good idea. But she talks him into it. She uses clever arguments. She said, but wouldn't Priam do it if he won? And Agamemnon says, yeah, he would, and he walks. He also arrives with a captured Trojan princess, Cassandra. And Cassandra is staying in the chariot. He walks in. So there's something in the palace we don't know. Clytemnestra comes back and says, oh, Cassandra, please come. Cassandra is not going. She's staying there, silent. And then she starts saying, oh, totally. And Clytemnestra says, well, mad barbarian princess, and walks back. And then Cassandra, the next scene is mind-boggling. It's very tragic, it's very touching, it's extremely beautiful. It's a speech by Cassandra talking to the chorus, of course. Chorus is always present. Chorus never goes away. Somebody has to watch, because if nobody watches, nothing happens, you know. If a tree falls, so nobody, chorus is always there. So, and Cassandra suddenly says, I feel the terrible blood there. I feel terrible things which happened there. And chorus said, are you a prophetess? And she said, yes. Apollo gave me this gift of prophecy, which I wanted to use to save my city. But he wanted something in return, and I refused. Well, you could figure out what he wanted. And they always do. So she refused. And Apollo, who couldn't take his gift away, gave her additional gift, the gift of never being believed. Whatever she will prophesy, and of course she prophesies correct things, nothing like that will happen. So, and here she prophesies, and suddenly even chorus starts believing her. Never before, but I guess when you come to the end. So she prophesies about the terrible past, apparently even before this generation in the previous generation, there was a terrible crime committed by Atreus, the father of Agamemnon. He fed children of his brother to his brother. That is not a good thing to do. This is one of the terrible crimes which appears there. I mean, eating human flesh was a major taboo for Greeks, but feeding your brother his children, so there is a terrible curse, and she knows. We're just finding it out. And the man who now is in the palace, who apparently is a lover of Clytemnestra, is the son of this Festus, the one who ate his children. One of his children survived, and now, taking revenge, he became a lover of Clytemnestra. And then, so she says, and there will be blood now. Blood of Agamemnon and my blood, I know that. And then she prophesies about the future. But then they will die too. Years will pass, but they will die. Terrible stuff. And then she bravely goes in. They say, why are you going? You know they will kill you. And she says, I am not afraid. You have to fulfill one destiny. And she remembers her parents who were killed, her brothers who were slaughtered, and walks in. The door closes. Then we hear screams, terrible screams, 2 screams of Agamemnon. He receives 3 blows from his wife and screams twice. The 3rd blow finishes him up. And then suddenly a platform moves out. This is a typical device in Greek theater. They will never show violence. They had good taste. So violence is always behind. But then the results of the violence, the dead bodies, would be moved out. And what we see is the scene with Clytemnestra standing up, holding the sword. The blood is dripping. And at her feet, there is a dead body of Agamemnon in a bathtub. And a body here is a body of Cassandra. And he makes a speech saying, well, so I killed him. So I lied about being his dutiful wife. But I was in the right. I had to take revenge for my daughter. He killed my daughter. That is her point. And after that, I have to abbreviate a lot. After that comes Aegisthus, her lover. With a bunch of well-armed guys. They're sort of in the back, you do not quite see them. But they're there. It says, and I had the right to arrange that. I was behind her. He accepts full responsibility for the murder. Says, I had the right. I had to take revenge for my father and my brothers. The chorus is speechless, but it's a terrible, what they see is a terrible thing. The king was killed in front of them. The murderers admit the guilt, and they basically pick up their sticks. These are old men, the choruses of old men who couldn't go to Troy. So they pick the sticks and say, we will just now beat you up. And Aegisthus says, oh yes, swords out. And these armed guys get the swords, sword against the stick, So the power establishes order. You have to listen to them. They have the swords. And Clytemnestra is very generous. She says, no more bloodshed. We're done. We don't want to have blood on our heads. Think about it. She's standing there with blood dripping. We don't want blood on our hands. That's the end of Agamemnon, one of the three. And I have to do the other two even faster. So the second one is libation-bearers. Agamemnon has a son called Orestes. He was taken to his cousin. He's living there. But then eventually, God Apollo comes to him and says, you have to take revenge for your father. It is your duty. And Zeus requires you to do it. Again, Zeus is the top god. Apollo is a very important god who tells people what Zeus thinks. There's this special place called Delphi, the oracle, where he tells people what to do. And this Delphian god Apollo says, Orestes, you have to go. And they start going to Argos, he with his best friend, Pilatus. So they two arrive, and there is a commotion. I am simplifying a little bit. There is a commotion in the palace. Screams. Clytemnestra had a dream, a very bad dream. She saw in her dream that she gave birth to a snake, which beat her breast. Instead of sucking milk, she bit, and the blood and milk are coming together. You would scream if you had a dream like that. I would. But it's a terrible thing. So she knows that something which needs to be done. So what do you offer? What do you do in cases like that? You have to offer libation, a sacrifice, to somebody you killed, in this case, Agamemnon. And what happens is that while they're preparing libation, Orestes with his friend go and visit the tomb of Agamemnon. He cuts lock of hair, puts it on the tomb, that's sort of a sacrifice, and hides. And here come the libation bearers, and among them, the person who leads the thing is Electra, his sister. The mother wouldn't go herself. She would send her daughter, which is abused and mistreated, but nevertheless is still there to offer. And there is a beautiful recognition scene between Electra and Orestes where they discuss, what do we do? And yes, we have to kill. I mean, Orestes has to kill. And he first finds Aegisthus, kills him, then confronts Clytemnestra, and they discuss about this mother-son thing. She says, yes, I fed you, I breastfed you, which is true. But he said, look, I mean, you killed my father. Don't forget, there is no legal appeal. She is the reigning queen. Her lover, whom he just killed, was a tyrant. He couldn't just... So he has to use lex talionis, an eye for an eye. He has to go, and that's what you do. And the god demands, so he cuts her throat. But it's a terrible thing to cut your mother's throat, even if she's guilty, even if the revenge is in order. And here we come to the conclusion and the transition to the next thing, because what he suddenly sees, nobody else sees them. He sees Irenaeus, Furies, terrible black figures dark. They're all black, with probably black horse hair wigs. They are dreadful. They're so dreadful that pregnant women in the audience have miscarriages. Now, this is what we know. I mean, it's not certain. There's later reports. Apparently, very scary scene. But nobody else sees them, and he runs away. The end of second play. And these important people, they come and go. The end of second play. The third play is called the Furies. Again, it starts at Delphi with Orestes sitting at the shrine of Apollo, surrounded by the dreaming Furies. But he cannot move. And then Apollo comes and says, don't worry. I remove your guilt, blood guilt. There was a ritual for removing blood guilt. And many people could do it, but for sure God Apollo could do it. He killed a young piglet and poured the blood over Orestes. That clearly makes you clean. And that was the way. That was the way. It will change before the end of this thing. So, but while he is technically guiltless, Furies wouldn't go away. They don't care. He killed his mother. The society accepts him. Gods accept him. Furies, no. So Apollo suggests this thing. Go to Athens. Apply for the help of Athena, and I'll come and testify. So they go there, and here is a great scene of the trial of Orestes in Athens, which changes the world. It's an earth-changing, world-changing event. On one hand, we have Furies. And they say, very simply, okay, let me stop back. Okay, now, the Furies say, we swear he killed his mother. We insist that it's true. And we're ancient goddesses. They're more ancient than Athena or Apollo. They're terrible, primordial goddesses who insist that they're right and he has to be destroyed. They will torture him forever. In the underworld as well. So that's their point. Orestes says, look, I was told by Apollo. And Apollo comes. And Athena pronounces these absolutely immortal words. They say, I know what to do. We will have a trial by jury. There was no trials by jury ever before. She invents this new thing, trial by jury, as a thing which serves instead of blood sacrifice to determine guilt or innocence. She assembles 11 people. She's going to be the 12th herself. She assembles them and she says, we're going to decide. And Apollo makes a speech, rather unconvincing speech. It's so unconvincing that most jurors do not actually believe it. His speech is that, well, mother is not really a blood relative at all. That's what he says. And he uses a profound argument. He says, look at Athena here. She was born from her father. There was no mother involved. There was a mother involved, but he forgets it. But so that's his argument. And then he says, and Zeus is on our side. It's a powerful argument. He has a message. And Iphigenia said, look, I mean, if you vote for unjust decision, terrible things will happen. You are breaking the rules of justice. Athena says, let us vote, and if there is a tie, Orestes goes. That's a rule from that point on, that unless you get at least a majority, you have to let the guilty person go. He's innocent. And they vote. 6 people vote guilt. 5 people vote innocence. And Athena votes innocence. So he goes. By the way, Apollo is gone. He doesn't want to know what happens. He just has other business far, far away. Maybe Ethiopians, I don't know. But he doesn't wait for the resolution. It's all right now Athena who decides all of that. And the Furies are very, very mad. And you don't want mad Furies around. And they say, yes, we are going to poison this entire land. It is going to be sterile. Nothing will ever grow. Women will not have children. They can do it. And Athena, she always had something in the back of her mind. She starts saying, look, but you were not humiliated. It was a tie. It was a tie. And we could give you something you will never get any other place. They say, we will destroy this land. They are not interested. They want vengeance. After all, they are vengeance. We will destroy your land. And Athena says, yes. But we will venerate you here. And she suggests a very amazing thing, that these Furies, instead of being Furies, will be called the kindly ones. And everybody in Athens would venerate them constantly. That is, the justice will be venerated by the state constantly. And the rule of justice will be enforced. Everybody who they are still there in the cave beneath the city. So we better behave. But this beautiful compromise is reached. That is, suddenly these chthonic divinities, the divinities of the underworld, are accepted. And they're never venerated before. In general, Greeks venerate Olympic gods. There are some rumors that there is some place, there is a shrine to their mother, Nyx, the night, the terrible, dark night. She's so terrible that Zeus is afraid of her. Right? But there is this duality. And now they're accepted as they are. It's not that they put white, beautiful robes of Olympic gods. Olympic gods always wear white. They always wear black. But they will cement the legal structure of Athens. So this is the play. And it is repeated time and time by Athena. When she talks, she first turns to the audience, not to the jurors on stage, but to the audience there. And she says, these will be forever. Whatever I am going to establish will last forever. The trial by jury, this will be forever. This is not just, right? So, again, it shows us this remarkable thing. Again, we see how this bloody story, it says bloody as it can, somebody feeds children. I cannot find anything bloodier than that. Well, yeah, I read Euripides, so yes, I can find bloodier. But this is very bloody. So, but there is this catharsis, the resolution. We come to the point where we are civilized. These Furies, these spirits of revenge, become foundational part of our civilization. And it's hidden. They're hidden beneath. We do not see jails. We do not see police except on the news. But there are people who kill to allow us to live in a civilized society. Again, this is all controlled. This Athenian compromise still holds. I mean, so far Western civilization never lost this sort of legal foundation on which it was put by Athena. I don't know when. These are Homeric times. Remember, this is not times of Aeschylus. He's talking about far, far back. But he elaborates and writes this beautiful presentation, which I hope you will someday see in a theater. However well I did it here, I think that seeing it in a theater is much more exciting. The title of the lecture is Civilizing the Furies. So now we